Hi everyone, this is Melissa, artist in residence at Imagine, and today I'm sharing a project where I create a textured background using a few simple items that you probably already have in your craft room. I know that the background stamps for texturing paper are really popular now, and I kind of wanted to find a way where I could mimic that effect. So I'm taking a piece of Kraft cardstock, scribbling on an acrylic block with my Memento marker, and then simply adding one small spritz of water to that acrylic block and smushing my paper into it. Now you could also do this with your Memento ink pads if you have those, by just adding some color to the block and then adding that one spritz of water. And you get this really amazing kind of texturing on the paper just from this simple technique. As a matter of fact, this almost looks like a tree bark when I'm finished, but it also kind of looks like burlap or some other type of linen texture that you could add to a creation. So the next one that you see me doing is scribbling on some cottage ivy, and that's a dark green in the Memento marker, and then adding that to a white piece of cardstock instead. And this happens to be a Bristol Smooth. Bristol Smooth tends to take water a little bit better than some of your other craft or some of your other white cardstock. You could also use watercolor paper, but what you can see when I do this and I add a little too much water is you get some smearing. You get like a smearing type effect. So now I'm going in with some bamboo leaves and adding that to the acrylic block, and again adding one simple spritz of water and then pushing that paper into the block to get a beautiful textured background. The cool thing is you can also stamp on top of these texturing, and you're going to see me do that with this SugarPea Designs stamp set. I am going to be using the succulent that you can see in the bottom center of the stamp pad, and I will be stamping that on this Bristol Smooth paper after it's dry from the background technique, adding aloe vera Versa Magic ink and stamping that with an acrylic block right onto that paper. And I zoom in here so you can really see that beautiful texture that shows through from the Memento marker underneath the Versa Magic ink, and I'll simply die cut that out. And now I will take some Jumbo Java Versa Magic ink and ink that up and then stamp it onto the textured background that I did with the brown Memento marker. And again, you'll see some of that texturing come through, which really does add some depth to your stamping. Now I'm taking one of these small succulents and again inking it up and stamping that repeatedly on this little strip of paper, and I'm just kind of working on my card design at this point. Now you'll notice I stamped that little pot that the succulent is in the center of that textured paper, and I go ahead and I use those scraps of paper because why not use those as card bases for layering if you can. Now I'm taking my Territ tape. Territ tape works well whenever you have paper that has had some water on it because it helps stop warping. And I left a little bit of overhang so that I could cut that off. When you cut it off, it squeezes the adhesive to the paper so that it's much simpler to remove the strips on the backing that you can see. So I'm going to add that green layer to my card base, and then I will simply use the brown piece to layer over it. So you can see me adding that to my A2 size card base. An A2 size is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I'm going to take the Territ tape again and add it to this textured brown craft paper that I've made. Again, just adding that Territ tape all over and not worrying about that hole that's cut in the center of that paper, trimming off the edges of the tape again, and then simply laying that down on my card. This is a very simple technique, making these backgrounds, and I think it adds a lot of interest to your creations because oftentimes I find myself just reaching for solid colored cardstocks to do layering, but you can see how beautiful this really looks. So now I'm just going to speed up the film here, and you can see how I've layered some of these pieces onto the card base, and specifically using the pieces again that I cut the aloe out of. I don't really care about that as I'm going to be covering those strips up. So I'm just adding some of the craft with the textured background and some of that white cardstock on the textured background as well. And I'm going to use Pine Cone VersaFine Clair to stamp the sentiment, and I apologize, I was a little bit off camera there. So you can see the sentiment says everything sucks without you, and the sucks is representative of the succulents that I'm using on this card, which I think is super cute. So now I'm going to be scribbling a little bit more of that Memento ink and kind of adding some color to this card because I felt like the texture on the texture on the texture was a bit much. So I'm going ahead and just watercoloring with the Memento marker onto that white paper. Again, you can do this with your Memento inks if you don't have the Memento markers, but to be honest with you, I love the markers because they're so versatile. So now you see the final project. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial and that you'll join us again at Imagine for more great projects. And don't forget to hit the description box at the end to find out what products I used today.